head tie neatly tied, and her wide waist moving, with purpose. Mama Nkechi ladles soup into bowls, plates, even plastic bags. Her voice sings over the bubbling broth. Who go chop, come, Una. Most students don't call her Mama Nkechi. They call her Mama Love, because that's what she gives with every spoon of her pepper soup. The woman behind the pot, Mama Nkechi, didn't have much, but she gave like she had everything. She lost her husband during a motor accident in AB. 1 minute, he was going to get palm oil from his elder brother's place. The next, she got a call that his bus had somersaulted 3 times on the express. He died on the spot. That was 10 years ago. She had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. And when they couldn't afford school anymore, she turned to what she knew best, cooking. Not just any cooking. She had a secret, a recipe passed down from her grandmother in a moa kind of pepper soup that goats, meat, catfish, dry scent leaf, yuta seeds, and something she never told anyone. Maybe it was love, maybe it was faith, but everyone agreed Mama Nkechi's pepper soup tasted like home. The boy who never paid heed first came on a rainy Tuesday skinny, so skinny, like hunger had beaten him since birth. His lips were dry, and his shoes had holes like it, but his eyes, those eyes, sharp, bright, like someone who had fire inside but no match to light it. Madam, he whispered, please. I never chopped since yesterday. Mama Nkechi didn't ask questions. She simply scooped the soup, added extra meat, and passed it to him. No worry, eat. He blinked. But, I no get money, she smiled. Money, no day cook soup. Eat, my son. That's how it started. His name was Chuka, second-year computer engineering. He came almost every day. Sometimes he'd try to help wash plates or lift buckets of water. Sometimes he brought nylon bags filled with bread he got on credit and shared with others, but he never had money, and Mama never asked. God go bless you, Mama, he always said, licking his fingers. She would laugh. I know they cook for God's blessing. I cook because pickin' no suppose, sleep hungry. The struggles behind the smiles, what most people didn't know, was that Mama Nkechi herself sometimes went to bed hungry. She would sell from morning till evening, only to count her earnings and find that half was gone from feeding students who couldn't pay. But she never complained. Her daughter, Adaze, once said, Mama, we don't have enough. You can't feed the whole university. Mama Nkechi only one, and then another, and then another. That's how God feeds us too, faith like a rock, tight and unshaken. Even when her son fell sick and she couldn't, when her landlord gave her quit notice, even when Adaze dropped out of nursing, Mama never stopped cooking, believed that God would remember her. She just didn't know when. The promise one evening, as the sun dipped behind the orange rooftops, Chuka sat on a wooden bench beside her. Mama, he said quietly, I go make one day. She looked at him, smiling. I know, I swear. If God bless me, I go build you restaurant, big one, air condition, menu, uniform, everything. She chuckled. Just finish school first, my son. Pepper soup, no day run. Chuka nodded. But remember, my promise. I go. Remember, Chuka. That was the last time she saw him. The disappearance the next semester came. Chuka didn't. Rumors flew. Some said he dropped out. Some said he traveled to Lagos to chase tech money. Others said he was working at a cyber cafe, learning coding, and staying up all night with generator noise and Gory by his side. Mama worried. But she knew she couldn't hold him back. Life was calling. Still, every time she stirred her pot, she hoped to see his face again. She never did. Years passed. New students came. Some paid, some didn't. She kept feeding them all. Her wrinkles deepened, but her smile never faded. And then one day, everything changed. The black Jeep. It was a Tuesday, hot, dusty. The generator at the kiosk beside her had just died. Mama Nkechi was fanning herself with a piece of cardboard, wet charcoal, pulled up in front of her stand. She didn't look up at stop for pepper soup. But then the door opened, and out stepped a tall man in a sharp blue suit. His face was different, fuller, beard-lined, wristwatch blinking like a disco light. But the eyes, those eyes, Chuka, the man's smile. Mama, she froze. The spoon in her hand dropped into the pot. Jesus. Chuka rushed forward and hugged her right there, in front of everyone. Students stopped to stare, drivers paused. Even the Suya man across the road forgot to turn his stick. Mama, Chuka whispered, I told you I would come back. Her hands shook as she held his face. My son, I made it, Mama. I built something. An app. Investors. Now we're in 5 countries. But I came home for you. She was crying. He was crying. Even the air around them seemed to pause. That day, the pepper soup sold out faster than ever, not because people were hungry, but because they wanted to be close to something real, something beautiful. Chuka didn't just come back with words. He came back with a plan. But the tech billionaire came back, Mama Nenkachi. By the next morning, half the university had gathered around her pepper soup spot. Some of it was true. She smiled. Well, I'll give you a full tank. She didn't understand, at least not yet. Came to her house with Chuka. They carried papers, maps, and something she had never seen before. Tablet, Mama. Chuka said, I bought land, right at the university junction. Her eyes widened. For what? For your restaurant? Your name will be on the building. Mama Nkechi's Pepper Soup Palace, she gasped. Palace key, kitchen staff, uniforms, indoor and outdoor seating, a cold room, solar lights, menu board, pays machine, pays, qua, yes Mama. No more cash wahala. You'll even have delivery riders. Students will order online. She covered her mouth. Chuka, this is too much. He took her hands. It's not enough, Mama. It's never enough for someone who fed half a school for free in 6 months. The land became a structure. In 1 year, it became a brand. Mama Nkechi's Pepper Soup Palace opened with a live band, a ribbon-cutting ceremony, and a full-page story in Daily Sun. TV stations came. Students danced. Her children cried. Adazed, her daughter, who had once sold phone pouches on the roadside, became the manager. Her second son, Emeka, left his mechanic job to supervise the kitchen logistics. Her youngest, Junior, returned to school, his fees fully paid. Mama didn't stop cooking though, even with a staff of 10. She still stirred the big pot herself every morning. They came from my hand, she told the head cook. So my hand must touch the soup one day. She called Chuka Ahan. She said, arms akimbo, you have done well, my son, but some of those boys and girls I used to feed, they're still suffering. He nodded. Say no more, Mama. That week, the Mama Nekachi Foundation was born. It started with 10 students, full mentorship within 2 years. The number grew to 50, then 100. By the 5th year, her foundation had paid school fees for over 300 students across Nigeria. Mama Nkechi was no longer young. Her hands were slower, her back not as straight, but her spirit, fierce. Chuka came again, this time with a bigger surprise. Mama, he said, as they sat under her favorite mango tree, your grandchildren want to go to Canada. I want to sponsor their. He smiled. Full tuition, accommodation, everything. What kind of child are you? Chuka chuckled. The one you fed. In 5 years, Mama Nkechi became more than just a woman who sold soup. Featured on CNN Africa, BBC Pidgin, and Channels TV, they called her the mother of Oko students, the woman who fed a nation, the queen of kindness. She received awards from NGOs, local councils, and even the state governor. But every time someone handed her a plaque or microphone, she said the same thing. I'm just a widow who gave one boy a plate of soup. The rest, not God. On her 65th birthday, Mama Nkechi sat quietly on the balcony of her now 3-story house. Not the old wooden kitchen by the roadside, not the dusty bench, but her own home, with tiles that shone like mirrors and curtains that danced in the breeze. Looked through old photos, one of her husband, one of her younger children, and one of a skinny boy holding a plastic bowl, smiling. She held that picture tight. Kindness, she whispered, is never wasted. The return one evening, a young girl walked to her office at the restaurant. She wore a faded school uniform and stood quietly, twisting her fingers. Mama, heard you help students. Mama smiled. Are you hungry? The girl nodded. Mama pointed to the kitchen. Go and eat first. We'll talk after. That was how the cycle continued. One bowl, one student, one future at a time. Kindness always returns. Sometimes with interest, sometimes when you least expect it. But it always finds its way home. I still remember the day he left. Not because of anything grand he said or did, but because of how quiet it was. Just silence. No goodbye. No, I'll come back. Just the sound of the door closing behind him, and the weight of my own heartbeat echoing in my chest. I stood there, 3 months pregnant with twins, thinking maybe if I held my breath long enough, he would turn back, but he never did. His name was Femi. We met in the final year of my university days. He had this wild charm about him, confident, magnetic. He wasn't the richest, but he dressed like he had the world in his pocket and kissed like he meant it. I thought he loved me. He said he did, but love, I would later learn, was more than passion in hidden corners and promises made in the dark. When I told him I was pregnant, he went quiet. For days. Then one morning, he looked at me with eyes that no longer held light and said, "I'm not ready to be a father," as if I had signed a form saying I was ready to do it alone. I watched him pack, one shirt at a time, with a look of defeat on my face that slowly hardened into resolve. Those first few months were a blur of shame and fear. My body was changing, but my world was collapsing. I dropped out of school. My parents refused to support me, calling me a disgrace. I moved into a small room in Ajegunle, barely enough for one person. But it became the place where I brought life into this world. Not one, but two lives. My beautiful twin boys, Emmanuel and Daniel, came out crying, but I held them and cried louder. Not because I was sad, but because I had no clue what I was going to do. I was 23, jobless, and completely alone, yet somehow, in that moment, I felt purpose. Their tiny fingers wrapped around mine like they were telling me, "Don't give up, Mama." I didn't. We fought every single day, not with fists, but with hunger, sleepless nights, and landlords who never stopped knocking. I sold everything I had, my phone, my laptop, even my favorite gold earrings, just to buy baby milk. Sometimes we would eat only gari for 2 days, straight. I remember once, Emmanuel asked, "Mummy, why is this water sweet?" I smiled and said, "Because I prayed on it." The truth was, it was just sugar water. That was all we had. There were nights I stayed up staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made the wrong decision by keeping them. If maybe, just maybe, I had given up too much, my youth, my dreams, my body. But every time they wrapped their little arms around me and whispered, "I love you, Mummy," the doubts faded. Years passed. The boys grew into smart, stubborn, funny little men. They were each other's shadow, always playing, always fighting, always defending. Daniel was more outspoken, quick-tempered, but fiercely loyal. Emmanuel was quieter, more thoughtful, always watching, always thinking. One night, when they were about 10 years old, we were sitting on the floor eating boiled yam, when Daniel asked, "Mummy, do we have a daddy?" I froze that it was like time stopped for a second. The yam piece I had been chewing suddenly felt like stone in my mouth. I looked at Emmanuel, who had paused, mid-bite, eyes wide, watching me for an answer. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I had dreaded this moment for so long. "Yes," I finally whispered. "You have a father, but he left before you were born." "Why?" Emmanuel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard. "Because he said he wasn't ready to be a father." They were silent. Then Daniel, with all the hurt a child could carry, burst into tears. Emmanuel followed, and then I did too. We sat there, 3 broken hearts, holding on to each other. They didn't ask further. They didn't need to. The silence between us said it all. After that night, something changed in them. They became more serious, more protective of me. They saw how hard I worked washing clothes for people, cleaning houses, even hawking a car just to put food on the table. They never complained. Even when they wore the same shoes for 2 years. Even when they had to read with candlelight. There was a time I fell terribly ill. Malaria and typhoid hit me hard. I was unconscious for a day. I woke up to find them beside me, fanning me with pieces of cardboard, their eyes red from crying. Emmanuel whispered, "Mummy, please don't die." I didn't. I couldn't. I had to live for them. Secondary school came, and they both got scholarships from a local NGO. That was the beginning of our little breakthrough. They studied hard, too hard. Sometimes, they would stay up till 2 a.m., studying with torchlight. I watched them grow into young men, strong, full of dreams. One Sunday afternoon, when they were 20, something strange happened. Emmanuel came home with a smile I hadn't seen in years. "Mummy," he said, "you won't believe it." He told me about a man he had met at a tech conference. The man was impressed by his presentation on digital logistics and offered him a contract job with a salary I had never even imagined. Before I could fully grasp it, he added, "I told him I had a twin brother. He said the offer is open to both of us." I sat there, stunned, as they hugged me. I cried again, but this time, it wasn't out of pain. It was joy. It was relief. It was that quiet voice of God saying, "I never left you." They started working, saving, planning. They never let me lift a finger again. One day, they came home with bags of groceries, And Daniel said, "Mummy, this house is too small. We're going to move." A month later, we moved into a 3-bedroom apartment. For the first time in my life, I had a real bed, not a mat or foam. They even bought me a fridge. I kept opening and closing it just to feel it hum. I would stare at the TV they bought and laugh like a child. All the things I used to pray for, they were giving me. Every morning, I would kneel beside my bed and say, "Thank you, Jesus," over and over. But just when I thought the story was complete, life had more chapters to offer. I didn't know that somewhere in the city, the man who left us was watching. He had no idea who they had become. Not yet. People say life has a way of coming full circle. I never fully understood that until I watched my sons rise from nothing to something. No something would be too small a word. They rose into men the world couldn't ignore. They carried my name, my sacrifice, and my prayers into every room they entered. And with every step they took forward, they dragged me out of the pit I once cried in. After Emmanuel got the contract job and brought Daniel in, everything changed. They worked like men on fire morning till night. No breaks, no excuses. Some nights they would come home so tired they'd fall asleep on the floor with their laptops still open, faces lit up by code and spreadsheets. And yet, every single morning, they kissed my forehead and said, "Good morning, Mummy." They used their first paycheck to surprise me. They showed up one day with a beautiful wrapper, a new pair of shoes, and an envelope. I opened it and my hands started shaking. It was filled with crisp 1,000 Naira notes, more money than I had held at once in years. I covered my mouth and burst into tears. Daniel grinned. "That's just the beginning, Mummy. We owe you the world." I didn't know how to feel. For so long, I had lived with lack, with the mindset of scarcity. It felt like if I celebrated too hard, everything would disappear again. But it didn't. The blessings kept multiplying. They started working with international clients, building apps, creating systems, managing logistics for companies across Africa. They never let their success enter their head. Every Friday night, we still sat on the floor and ate amala together. No matter how fancy their jobs got, they always came home to me. They began investing real estate, tech startups, even a delivery company in Lagos. Their names started appearing in articles, blogs, interviews. People who once ignored me in church now greeted me with 2 hands and called me Mummy Twins. I would just smile and say, "Nah, God do am." Then one evening, they told me they wanted to build a house. "Not for us," Emmanuel said. "For you." I laughed like they were joking. They weren't. They took me to a piece of land on the outskirts of Lekki. "This is yours, Mummy, from the ground up. We're building it with our hands for you." I stood there, on that empty land, the wind blowing through my wrapper, and cried like a child. Every week they took me there to see the progress. A fence, then the structure, then the tiles, then the furniture. One day I walked in, and the kitchen smelled like cinnamon and fresh paint. A framed photo of me and the twins sat on the dining table. I had never imagined this kind of life. Then came the day that changed everything. Emmanuel walked in looking disturbed, his face to talk. My heart skipped. "What happened?" He sat down beside me. "Do you remember, Femi?" The name hit me like a forgotten wound being touched again. I hadn't said it in years. "Yes," I whispered. "He's been trying to contact us." I blinked. "How? Why?" Daniel walked in at that moment and sat on my other side. "Apparently, he found out who we are. He wants to talk to us." I laughed, not from humor, but from disbelief. After all these years, Emmanuel nodded. His wife can't have children. Now he wants to reconnect with us. I looked at both of them, searching their faces for anger, confusion, or maybe compassion, but their expressions were unreadable. "Do you want to see him?" I asked. They shook their heads in unison. "Not without you," Daniel said. "And honestly, we're not even sure we want to at all." I sighed deeply. "I'm not angry at him anymore. Not really. But that doesn't mean you owe him anything." They nodded. We didn't speak of it for a while, but he didn't stop trying. He sent emails, messages, even showed up at a business event where the twins were speaking. Security had to escort him out. The boys made one thing clear: they were not going to give him the chance to hurt me again. They protected me like soldiers, and I'll never forget what Daniel said the day we finalized my relocation to the UK. "We're not running from him, Mummy. We're running toward your peace." And just like that, a woman who once sold akara at bus stops was flying across the ocean, first class. I couldn't believe it when the plane lifted. I looked out of the window and whispered a quiet prayer. God, I see you. London was cold, but the welcome was warm. They had rented a beautiful home for me, big windows, floral wallpapers, soft couches. I felt like I was living someone else's life. I would walk to the park in the morning, sip hot chocolate at cafes, and even joined a local women's group. That's where I met him, David, a retired nurse, Nigerian-born, gentle-eyed, widowed for 10 years. He was kind in a way I had never known. We talked for weeks. Then we walked. Then we laughed. And one day, he said, I know you've been through a lot. I'm not here to fix you. Just to remind you that you're worthy of being loved. I didn't answer. I just held his hand. At 60, I was learning how to smile without pain. How to love without fear. Back home, my son's empire kept growing. They started a foundation in my name, helping single mothers and orphans. They got married, each two strong, brilliant women. And when they had their own children, they called me first, Mummy. Emmanuel said through the phone, tears in his voice. It's a girl. Daniel followed a year later. Mummy, meet your grandson. Sometimes, in the quiet of my home, I would sit and think about the girl I once was. The one who stood with the torn wrapper and swollen belly, begging man to stay. I would hold my tea close and whisper, if only she knew the future waiting for her. We never saw Femi again. He sent a long letter once, apologizing, begging for a second chance. I forgave him, but I never replied. Not every story ends with full reconciliation. Some just end with peace. I used to think forgiveness meant opening the door again, letting the person back in, giving them a seat at the table they once walked away from. But as I sat in my new home, with sunlight seeping through tall glass windows, watching my face each other through the garden, I finally understood sometimes forgiveness is just a quiet release, a decision not to carry the weight anymore, a gift you give yourself. Femi never stopped trying to reach out. He sent some, typed something. He emailed, messaged, even tried to send gifts to my son's quarters. They returned everything, unbuffed. What surprised me was not his persistence, but the desperation. He wasn't reaching out to reconnect with me, something he had lost, the lot he could reclaim now that quiet. His will to give him children had left him. He left high never story, but I now lived alone, in a Cinderella, clinging photographs, and a live long to count. I look at their pictures on, see myself, in their walk mile, and it killing I missed it all, twist in my chest, not pity, not hateness. He was missed everything of replying one simple message. They mine. You just gave, but what was the point? Already written the reply from him. The boys with the company had expanded into they were on magazine covers, speaking at conferences, giving TED Talks. Yet, when they called me, they were still my boys, Mummy. Daniel said one night on a video call, his baby girl snuggled in his lap, can you believe we now own the house we once cleaned gutters in front of? I laughed. The world turns fast. My son. They flew me back to Nigeria after 2 years abroad. It was time. A surprise event was planned, quiet, elegant, intimate. I thought I was coming to visit, but when I stepped into the hall, I saw a banner that read, Celebrating Our Queen, Mama Emmanuel, and Daniel. Tears flooded my eyes before I could even move. Friends, old neighbors, past landlords, even women I used to sell a car beside stood up and clapped for me. They had dressed me in gold lace and crowned me with love. When I sat down to speak, I couldn't say much. Just one line. I once begged a man to stay. Now the world is begging my sons to speak. The room went silent, then erupted in applause. After the event, I snuck away to the back garden of the hotel, sat under a mango tree. The evening breeze wrapped around me like an old friend. That's when Daniel came out, holding a small white box. Mummy, he said, kneeling before me like I was royalty. We have one last gift. I opened the box. Inside was a key and a printed document. A property deed, my name at the top. Your own estate, Mummy, fully paid for. We named it Graceville. I couldn't speak. I just covered my face and wept. Everything I once thought I had lost, my dreams, my dignity, my future, had been returned to me in full. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Femi never got the chance to meet them. He died a year later. Stroke. Alone. When we heard the news, I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just stood in my garden and whispered, God, I hope he found peace before he left. The boys didn't attend the funeral. They didn't speak on it. But a week later, Emmanuel asked me gently, do you regret anything? I looked at both of them, my sons, my miracles, my answered prayers, and smiled. No, not one thing. Today, I live between two homes, London and Lagos. I spend my days gardening, reading, playing with my grandchildren, and mentoring young single mothers who feel like the world has ended. I tell them my story, not because I want them to pity me, but because I want them to see what's possible. I tell them, pain doesn't last forever. God sees, God remembers. Sometimes they ask me, what would you tell your younger self if you could go back? I always say the same thing. Hold on, my girl. The storm will pass. And when it does, the sun that rises will shine brighter than anything you've ever known. My story didn't end with a man choosing me. It ended with me choosing myself and God choosing to bless me anyway. The twins, my boys. My pride built their empire not from privilege, but from broken pieces. We gathered together. It was one of those hot, dusty mornings our court when nothing was one of those hot, dusty mornings our court when nothing seems to go right. My alarm didn't ring. Nipa took light to iron my clothes. My Bolt driver canceled on me twice, and by the time I motor park, the 7 a.m. bus had just pulled out. I stood there, suitcase in hand, sweating, frustrated, and silently panicking because I had an important meeting in a booth, but it pays the bills. This meeting was for a big logistics contract. One signature could change my whole life. I needed that trip. As I stood at the terminal gate, breathing heavily and watching the bus disappear down the road, I did something I didn't usually do in public. I prayed out loud. Just a few words. Just a few words. God, if I'm not supposed to go, stop it. And if I should go, protect me. Afterward, I felt calm, peaceful, even. Another bus was boarding. I bought my ticket and climbed in. It was one of those long, air-conditioned 14-seaters, big tinted windows, semi-comfortable seats, and a faint gospel playlist playing from the driver's phone. I settled into the last row by the window, row 5. I always liked window seats. I liked watching the trees blur past. Just before the bus moved, I felt something strange, like a soft tap on my shoulder, except no one was there. A whisper in my spirit said, "Get down." I turned and looked around. Nothing was wrong. The woman beside me was munching biscuits and scrolling through Instagram. Up ahead, a couple of passengers were laughing. The driver was inspecting the tires. Everything looked normal, so I brushed it off. I thought maybe it was nerves, anxiety. Maybe I was just being paranoid. I had prayed, right? I told myself I was covered. The bus moved at 8:15 a.m. I even remembered the exact time because I had just texted my younger brother to say I was on my way. Looking back now, I realize how fragile life is, how something so casual as simple trip can become the line between life and death. There were people on that bus I'll never forget. A newlywed couple sat 2 rows ahead. They couldn't stop giggling and feeding each other chin-chin. Beside them was a young corper, probably no older than 23, with his NYSC cap tilted just right, humming to himself. An older woman clutched a worn-out Bible on her lap, occasionally whispering silent prayers, and a baby barely a year old slept peacefully on her mother's chest, her tiny fists curled around her mum's wrapper. Me. I plugged in my earphones, played some Hillsong worship, and tried to calm my uneasy heart. Something still felt off. I just couldn't name it. Around that time, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. "Don't forget to read Psalm 91 before you travel. Say it out loud." I smiled to myself. That woman never missed a beat. Even when I was in university, she would call every morning to pray. Her faith was built like a mountain and moving, stubborn, and loud in a quiet way. I pulled up my Bible app and read it slowly, whispering each verse like a protective spell. "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." I said the whole chapter 3 times. Then I leaned back, closed my eyes, and drifted off. That's when I had the dream. I was standing in a long, dark tunnel, cold, eerie, and endless. I was walking fast, almost ran, pulled me back, gently but firmly. I tried to resist, to keep going forward, but the grip was too strong. Then, a voice, calm and final, said, "Not this way, not your time." I jerked awake. My heart was beating so fast I could feel it in my throat. Sweat had collected in the hollow of my neck. I sat up straight. The woman beside me looked over, startled. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded quickly, brushing it off, but I knew something had shifted. Outside, the sky had turned gray, and the clouds were heavy. Our driver, who up until then had been calm, was now speeding, overtaking vehicles, like he was late for a flight. The tires screamed on every sharp turn. My seatbelt felt too loose. The woman beside me frowned. "Why is this man speeding like this?" No one responded. I wanted to tell the driver to slow down, but my voice got stuck in my throat. We were nearing Guagualada when the trailer appeared. I'll never forget the sight, its huge body stretching across the highway. The driver in our bus attempting to overtake it on a curve. He shouldn't have done it. I gripped the metal bar in front of me and whispered, "Jesus, please." And then it happened. A loud, thunderous bang. Not like a tire burst. This one sounded final, like a wall breaking, like something ripping the sky open. The world around me went dark. I don't remember flipping or falling. I don't remember the sounds people say you hear: screams, metal crunching, windows shattering. I just remember silence, thick, unnatural silence, and floating. It felt like my body was below me, and I was watching everything from above, suspended, in space. Time slowed. I saw people mid-air. I saw the young corper thrown against the window, the couple curled into each other, the older woman with her Bible slumped over, the baby, oh God, the baby. Then I saw light. 2 figures, tall, glowing, one with wings, the other holding something like a sword. They stood next to me, just me. They didn't speak, but their presence was louder than any voice I had ever heard. "She is marked," I heard in my spirit. "Not today." And just like that, I was back in my body. Eyes open, I was alive. I was inside a mangled, overturned bus, but my body was whole. No cuts, no bruises, not a single drop of blood. My seatbelt was still latched. My bag was on the floor beside me, untouched. I crawled out through the broken window, barefoot, shaking, coughing from the smoke. The smell of burnt rubber and blood filled my lungs. I looked around. Everyone else was gone. Bodies lay still, some thrown far from the vehicle, others trapped inside. There was no movement, no sound. A man in a passing kick saw me stumble out and screamed, "Jesus!" One person survived. Somebody is alive. I fell to my knees. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just knelt there in the middle of the road, hands shaking, staring at the wreckage. There are no words for that kind of moment. Nothing prepares you for being the only one who walked away. People came. Police, ambulance, news reporters. Some cried when they saw the bodies. Others started filming. They asked me questions I couldn't answer. "What happened? How did you survive? Did you see anything?" I couldn't speak. All I kept hearing in my head was that voice. "She is marked, not today." Hours passed. I was taken to the hospital for checks. They ran scans, blood tests, physical examinations. The doctor looked at me like I was a ghost. "There's nothing," he said. "Not even a scratch. It's like you weren't even in the accident." But I was. I saw everything, felt everything. And yet, somehow, at night, alone in the hospital room, I stared at the ceiling and whispered, "Why me?" I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel special. I had doubts, fears, sins. I wasn't holier than the others. I wasn't the one holding a Bible. I wasn't a child, but God still saved me. That realization broke me. And that was only the beginning, because surviving the accident was only the first miracle. What came after the spiritual attacks, the media frenzy, the questions I had to face was a different kind of battle. Listen to those nudges, the whispers, the delays that don't make sense, because sometimes God doesn't stop things with thunder. Sometimes He whispers in the spirit, and if you listen, you just might live to tell the story.
In Harmony Estate, everyone knew Connell not because he owned a flashy car or ran a big company, but because he had something something far more powerful and shocking. A wife named Tola, who had turned him from a once fearless man into something like a rechargeable fan with a dead battery. Any time Tola pressed the button, Connell moved, and when she didn't, he stood still like traffic during Lagos Goslow. Before marriage, Kunal was the area's undefeated champion of stubbornness. He once argued with a police officer over a $5 bribe until the officer got tired and let him go. But since marrying Tola, the fire in him had turned to candlelight, and that candle had melted to a puddle. Tola wasn't one of those soft-spoken ladies you see in romantic comedies who gently wipe their husband's sweat. Nah, she was the kind who would burst into Connell now, or you'll sleep in the corridor tonight. And Connell would obey immediately, not because he enjoyed humiliation, but because he truly believed real love meant obeying every word from your wife like it was divine instruction. Connell practiced this belief like 3 square meals, morning, afternoon, and night. Even to wear boxers. He would ask, "My butter, should I wear the black one or the white one?" And if Tola said black, black it was. But if she raised an eyebrow and asked, "Are you all right?" Connell would apologize instantly and walk around boxer-less one afternoon. His neighbor, Mr. Idris, the mechanic, asked, "Connell, aren't you coming for the estate's Saturday football?" Connell smiled awkwardly and replied, "Let me confirm. With Madam first." But before he could step, Tola's model husband, often sitting outside the building to lecture anyone willing to listen. A real man obeys his wife. Submission is not weakness. It's the purest love. If someone teased him by calling him rapper husband, Connell would grin and say, "If loving Tola makes me a rapper, then I'm a full 6 yards of Ankara, perfectly ironed." Yet everyone saw the cracks, because Connell had once been the man who wouldn't swallow a mosquito insult. Now, if Tola called him a donkey at Mile 12 Market, Connell would just laugh and respond, "A donkey that loves you till death," and carry her basket of tomatoes with joy. Sometimes, Tola punished Connell by making him wear her wrapper for small mistakes, like forgetting to call her sweetheart during a call with her friends, or forgetting to rinse her socks. One day, as Connell returned home with 2 cartons of sachet water balanced on his head, someone from the top floor yelled, "Ah, Rapper King." But I'm okay. Tola even gave me permission to plea. Mr. Idris pulled out a dog-eared booklet. Stop kneeling to apologize, they advised. The estate to 5th birth compounds guava urgently, him to wear on church harvest days. His hair was freshly trimmed, and he had applied a subtle dash of roll-on. The men gasped like they'd seen a ghost. Nearly spilled his origin as he exclaimed, "Kunal, you came." She fell asleep watching her. Told her I was going to buy groundnut oil. I have. Men hugged him like and offered him a steaming. Connell smiled so wide you could almost see freedom shining in his eyes. He chewed the fish. He ran breathlessly into the compound, shouting, like someone bringing bad news from the battlefield, "Uncle Connell, anti-toppers." A cold wind of fear swept through the men, thick, like Nipper took light. The men turned to the estate gate. She was, Tola, wearing a headscarf, tied like a warrior's bandana, storming in. Silence spread. Connell sat frozen. Tola marched straight.